It's me, Dusted. You can call me Rashid. I'm an anthropologist and sociologist. Listen, let's say you were 15 years old in high school and you just decided to skip school one day just to go to some party, or you skip school just to go hang out with friends and smoke some weed or whatever. Well, it wasn't the proper thing to do, but back then, your fellow pupils heard about it that, whoa, you're cool, man, just skip school. You um, challenge authority. Well, I'm not saying it's not a good thing at all, but at that age, you may have gotten a warning or whatever, and guess what? You moved on. You were a minor still. Let's say now it's during college. I decided, well, I'm just going to skip this class. Okay, nobody cares. You're an adult. Nobody's going to go after you for missing a class. And by the way, you completed the exams well. You made it. You got your diploma. So who cares that you skipped class? But now now you're working. You have a job, and you skip days from work. Now it's a bit different. Because now, based on the contract, you can be fired. And if you're fired and you have no other source of income, well, you have a big issue now. And also, as someone that's 25 doing this, they're going to think you're not 15 anymore. Okay, back then, you got to throw out of it 15 years old, skipping school, but come on now. You're a grown man now. You have responsibilities. So, what you got away with when you were 15, it wasn't a good thing, but you cannot get away with it with an excuse right now. It's not going to work. Because the times changed. Okay, let's look at a different example. In the 1930s, you could get away smoking on where it was, a bus or any other public transport. Late in the 1950s, even on airplanes, people used to smoke. Well, guess what? Today, light up a cigarette or even an electronic cigarette on an airplane and you're kicked off. You may even be fined or be prosecuted for endangering your fellow travelers. Guess what? The times have changed. What your grandparents back then could get away with, smoking on an airplane, all of that, today, oh, don't even try to do it because you may even get a criminal record for it. Okay, another example. When you grew up, your mom, your dad, so even your grandparents used to pick up the belt or a spoon and hit you even you didn't listen. All your other friends during your childhood went through the same thing. Now, you have your own child and you gave him a slap in the face. Next thing you know, you're in handcuffs. The police arrested you. And you think, what the heck happened? I'm teaching my child discipline. Well, now you are disciplined by the judge with a criminal record for child abuse. Guess what? What your caretakers did to you was a crime. Using violence on a child. They should have been put in jail too for that. But the culture you grew up in was dysfunctional. Law enforcement was neglectful. But you now live in another time period, in an area where people are very strict on preventing child abuse and child harm. So what you endured growing up, you should have faced that it wasn't good, and you should have learned better ways to deal with disagreements. So now the judge forced you to go into therapy. And you think, why all this? Well, I survived. Yeah, you survived. You survive all types of mental and emotional defects. And because you're not homeless on the street, you think you ended up well. No, you didn't end up well. Well, the community is doing the right thing by stopping the cycle of abuse. What I'm saying is that sometimes you have believers that get in trouble because they hold on to behaviors, opinions, values, attitudes they should have unlearned and forfeited a long time ago. For example, let's say your dad used to be tired often. very tired and stressed out. He even developed disease because of it. How? Because at work, he was often screamed at, he was sometimes mistreated, had to overwork. People used to make arguments with him and couldn't say anything back because he could lose his job and had a family to raise. So, your father was in an unfortunate position in which others took advantage of him because they had the leverage over him. But he never complained. He went to work every day. And you hear similar stories around you. Now, you went through the same thing. Similar. But your son now tells you, Dad, I quit my job. And you ask him, what do you mean you quit your job, son? How can this? And he tells you, I'm going to go on welfare for a little while. Welfare? But you should earn your own money. You're a grown man. And your son tells you that. No disrespect towards you, but I'm a grown man indeed. I'm 23. And because I'm a grown man, I know when I need to leave a situation. And you're shocked. And you talk to your wife about it. Your wife agrees with you. Well, we did our best to raise our son. It's not our fault he became like that. But then, one individual older than you tells you, listen, the way our parents and us were raised to tolerate employers just having a way with us, I'm sorry, but that's quite harmful. That's why so many of them and many of us develop health issues. Your son saw what you went through and what around you went through and realized this is bad news. I don't want this for myself. Your son is doing the right thing. And now it's a epiphany to you to face that, you know what, indeed, you did allow bad things to happen to yourself. Because the thing is, when you and your father and all those other people were growing up, you didn't have e-commerce. You didn't have the internet like you have today and all of that. So the options to have extra income were limited. But today you can even earn extra income by having a YouTube channel or being an influencer. So your son today, with the social media and all the other technology around, he has more options to get an income besides having a job. So for him to put up with an employer bossing him around, that would be quite dishonorable and unacceptable. It was even honorable nor acceptable when you and your ancestors put up with it. But because you and your ancestors had less financial means, it can be excused to some extent. But for your son in this modern day and era to put up with that, what? Everyone else will look at them and think, dude, where's your self-worth? Look, what I'm saying in this mesh is that believers need to unlearn toxic behaviors, toxic attitudes, toxic opinions that are holding them back. Believers need to learn to examine things and admit things that are painful to admit. Admit it to themselves, and then they process them and they become better. That's what believers ought to do. Look, there's certain jokes that were common when I was growing up. I'm about to turn 32 very soon, next month, in August 2023. I'm about to turn 32. When I was 15 years old, it was common to make certain jokes about people's sexual orientation. It used to happen a lot. People laugh about it. Do that today, and you can be charged with a hate crime or with hate speech. Why? Times change. Well, I'm not here to talk about the politics around misgendering people and all of that. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just saying that you need to check the times you're in, the season you're in, and act accordingly. For example, let's say that you want to do a podcast addressing the controversial elements of society. Okay, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But if you still have a job and the people at work are all about conforming to society and ignoring the bad stuff, well, guess what? As long as you have that job at that location, you do that podcast may trigger conflict. Because you are associated with your podcast. But because you work at a certain place, the place you work at will also be associated with your podcast. And the people there at your workplace just want to conform to society and be left alone. So at some point you can understand that you having this podcast is going to trigger conflict. Now, if you're willing to face the conflict, so be it. But do understand you may be fired, or you may have to look for another job. Or you may have to look for other source of income just in case they fire you. Now, if you don't have a job like that, and you have multiple streams of income, well, just do it. But if, for example, you visit China for a vacation, then you may need to watch out what you're saying, because censorship laws are stricter in China. So certain things you say and post on the internet in Europe or in Brazil, you do it in China, they may press charge against you or may kick you out of the country. What I'm saying is that we need to learn to adapt to where we are. This does not mean we bend over to toxic restrictions. This does not mean that we can't be ourselves. We just need to realize that being yourself is not the best to do at all times. For example, let's say you have a neighbor who's quite disturbing in his attitude, and you feel a certain bad way about an individual. Well, you should be delivered from that anyway. Let's say this neighbor comes to the Starbucks and you work as a cashier at Starbucks. It doesn't matter how horrible you feel about this man. He's a customer for Starbucks. You're an employee of Starbucks. If you look at him in an angry way, whatever, because you can't stand him, listen, if your manager sees that, you can lose your job. He can even press charge against you if he really is upset by it. Why? Because in this case, in this context, you are an employee at Starbucks. He's a customer. Starbucks needs customers to survive as a business, so you had to operate according to your role. Now, of course, if the guy would go too far, you can call your manager and have him kicked out. That's different. But you need to learn to adapt to your situation. Do what's best in your situation. For example, let's say that at work you notice that things go a bit too far. If you don't have another source of income yet, then it may not be best for you to address this, because it may turn toxic for you at the workplace. Even if you're not fired, you now are sick because of toxicity against you. If you notice things will add up, and you hint towards it, people don't pick it up, begin to look for another job or another source of income, then leave. Sometimes we keep doing the right thing and getting ourselves in trouble. We have to stop doing what's right and learn to do what's best. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing what's right. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are times you have to do what is best. So always doing what's right is toxic. Always doing what's right is toxic. Because it's not always proper to do what's right. There are times you have to put what's right aside and do what's best. For example, let's say there's a court case. Someone has been caught speeding. They have to go to court. But at the same time, there are many child molesters molesting children. And the courthouse has limited time to deal with court cases. Now, if the courthouse would choose your case of speeding above a child molester on the loose, it will make the whole legal system look bad to the public. And there will be a lot of backlash, absolutely. So in this case, the judge may dismiss your case. It is the right thing to prosecute your case for the ticket you received for speeding. But is it the best thing? Look at the circumstances, no. So you get left off the hook much easier. Not because it was the right thing to do, you shouldn't be speeding on the road, but because it's the best for what goes on in the community. Sometimes judges will dismiss cases because they know that prosecuting that case is going to lead to too much conflict. Courthouses have the intelligence that, you know what, sometimes you need to drop a case. Even if it's proven someone is guilty and committed a crime, We cannot prosecute every crime to begin with because we don't have prisons to lock everyone up who commits a crime. We don't have enough police officers to arrest all those people. So we have limited resources as a criminal justice system, so we have to select which cases worth it. Courthouses know that they have limited police and limited prisons. So, because they have limited police capacity and limited prison capacity, they know we cannot prosecute everyone who commits a crime. If 20,000 people shoplift, then they don't have the time to arrest 20,000 people, have 20,000 court cases. Let's say you have 20,000 people that did shoplifting, but you also have 50,000 people that did, let's say, sexual harassment. There's 70,000 crimes, 17,000 people, or maybe 60,000, because some of these people do sexual harassment also steal. Can they do 60,000 court cases in an effective, convincing way? No. Do they have police officers to arrest 60,000 people just like that? Or do they have the prison capacity to monitor all the 6,000 people all at once? No. They have to select which case they deal with. And courthouses are firm in it. There are times they will dismiss cases if those cases will bring out too much difficulty. How come there are people out here who are less intelligent than those pagan courthouses? Always doing what's right is toxic. I'm not saying doing what's right is toxic, but always doing what's right, that's toxic. Learn to put what's right aside and do what's best. That's it for now. Keep on committing Christ and be at peace.